What's up, everybody? My name's Billy Boozer, and welcome back to the Everyday Hustle podcast. We've selected a name. It is going to be Everyday Hustle from this point forward, and I'm super excited about that because I don't have to think about that anymore. It's a solved problem. So Everyday Hustle is a podcast that talks to entrepreneurs and also people that are just in the business community that have learned lessons along the way that have guided them to great outcomes or the place they are today. And so today I've got a good friend of mine, someone that I've been in the metaphorical trenches and he's been in the literal trenches before in his life. And so I've got Aron Wagner with me. Aron is a really good friend from American Cloud. And I wanted to bring him on because he's got such a diverse story and past that has led him to the point that starting a business made sense because he was so, I guess, how do I put this? Motivated to do it by a significant need for the world needing something like this. Like the world needed to have this. And so I'll let Aron give his own intro. But Aron, tell us a little bit about you and what you're working on today.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. Super excited to be on with you today on the Everyday Hustle podcast. I'm glad you're able to decide on a name and make sure we're preaching that from the rafters.
Yeah.
Small background on myself, like you were referencing. Spent some time in the military. I was in the Army for 5 years, and then found myself in the technology space, primarily on the physical side of the internet, doing consulting in the data center and managed hosting space. And there's a whole host of things we'll probably talk about today about what led me down my path. Some of it may be a little bit of a hero complex that we get in the military, or I got in the military. We want to save the world. But I really did find passion and a need to want to solve greater problems so that everybody can continue to have access to the internet. So that's my little blurb, and I'm excited to talk about all the details today with you.
Yeah, I mean, one, thank you for your service. So I wear dog tags every day. Everybody hears me jingle around, but those dog tags are my dad's dog tag, and then a dog tag that represents my grandfather, and he was in World War II, and I guess maybe Korea. I can't exactly remember the other conflict, but he was stationed in a ship off in the Bering Sea, decoding messages from foreign adversaries. And I always have a huge amount of respect for everyone that served, and I can't tell you how much I respect you from it because, like I said earlier, we were in the metaphorical trenches at times, and your experience in dealing with difficult situations always shone through the moment that we were in. And so, I mean, I not to blow you up there a little bit, but I think it's an important thing because I've been there with you in times that were very difficult, and at least in the business sense, not in the kind of existential sense. So thank you for that. And then the other side that I think is interesting is, like, most people don't know about the physical internet, right? Like they know about what shows up at their endpoint at their Wi-Fi router or their Google Nest or whatever it is, and they don't really know what that means. So can you kind of expand on what the physical internet is a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this credit goes out to another friend of ours, Sean Terrio, for really bringing me under his wing through the space as I was getting out of the military. And so the physical internet is, it's a collection of facilities connected by cables, by fibers throughout the world. And there's subsea cables that are going through the oceans to connect the different continents together. And there's these facilities, data centers all around the world that are actually hosting data. And some of them are more expansive and resilient and, higher tier. They're hosting everything from, government type data all the way to consumer and retail. And then you have, enterprise data centers, even where companies have just put some hardware in their closet, and then they've had their local telecommunications provider bring fiber into that building. And it's really the collection of all these facilities and cables that make up the internet, and they all connect and peer in these different ways together. It's really interesting. Even in 2023 in the United States, I believe there's still 14 states that don't have an internet exchange point. And so even today, access to the internet varies by a lot, really by where you live. And there's new technologies, new companies coming out. Starlink's obviously been making waves with putting low Earth orbit satellites at scale and making the internet available in more remote locations. Low Earth orbit satellites aren't really a new concept, but Starlink's the first one to do it at scale. It really fascinated me. What really blew my mind was, I'm 24 years old. I'm getting out of the military. And I got to tour my first data center, and hearing the whir and the hum of all these servers, it took my breath away. And I realized that this is really the backbone of all of the fun applications that I had been using, not only in the military, but in my personal life.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to play Xbox Live without some serious servers. So most people don't realize that. I mean, like, I think, even in the Southeast, there are people that I know that are aware of these things because they'll see a Google building that's a giant data center, and they'll hear like, oh, they spent $1 billion or $500 million upgrading this data center. Or like, I mean, even where not too far from where I'm from, there's an Amazon, a Google, a Facebook, and then I think Akamai or Azure data center or something like that near us. And they're these monstrous black box buildings, basically, that have no real windows in them at all. They have monstrous HVAC units that sit out beside them and are heavily secured buildings, right? And that's actually where most of the transmission of our data is going through here in the greater Atlanta area. For most people, they're oblivious to the fact that this might be right near them, or they're oblivious to the fact that they're near an interchange. I mean, I think about that the first time I think I was ever introduced to this concept was when I heard some stories about like financial groups trying to get very close to interchanges so they could get faster speeds and lower latency for being able to do financial transactions. And you hear about like these real estate purchases in New York or places where they were right near the actual source of the data so that they could get the fastest result back. And I always think that those are really interesting stories. One of the things you mentioned was Sean and people that have affected your life along the way and you coming out of the military. So tell me a little bit about like what your experience was in the military and if there was any like technology in that world that like sparked your interest, or was it purely just the experience of being in the military?
Yeah, the military overall, is one of the greatest experiences and honors of my life. I went into the military as an 18 X-ray in the Army, which means that I was a Special Forces recruit. And unfortunately, early on, right after Special Forces preparation course, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So I was medically ineligible from continuing in that course. But I ended up going to the 82nd Airborne as an infantryman. I ended up going to Ranger School and earning the Ranger tab. And, I got to go overseas to Iraq in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. We were talking about the metaphoric trenches that we got to fight in together recently. And, it's interesting because everybody learns their basic personality characteristics and trains themselves a variety of different ways, right? From the military or from the private sector or from somewhere else. And it really doesn't matter so long as the individual does find their core beliefs and values and structure. And for me, I found a lot of that while I was in the military, as well as when I was getting sober prior to that. Nothing is better than getting into the trenches with people you trust to your left and right. It's always unfortunate to be in a conflict of any kind, needing to solve a problem. But when you can trust the person to your left and right, it makes that experience that much better. And what I found in the military was a group of guys who were willing to do more than anybody else that I had met in my life to that point. And we had to go through some pretty uncomfortable days. especially overseas. But also in Ranger School, just not a lot of sleep and not a lot of food, and being told to walk around and make decisions. It's uncomfortable, but when you're sitting there late in the patrol base in Dahlonega, Georgia, and it's freezing, and you and your buds are designing the different menu items that you want to eat when you graduate, you can still find some laughs. And we had a similar experience when we were launching Truth Social, was that last year. And, that first week, the app dropped early and there was a week of chaos. But to our left and right, we had everybody who was willing to do the hard work to solve the problems and come out of it on the other side. And it's experiences like that shape people. They continue to shape me, and I'll forever be grateful for being a part of them.
Yeah, I was listening to a thing from Simon Sinek the other day, and he was talking about like this kind of like matrix of the type of person and how to identify trustworthy people, right? And because in business and specifically in the military, if you have a high performer but is low trust, that is like one of the worst people you can have on your team, because that high performer is very difficult to get rid of, because you're like, oh, results are coming out of things, but you can't trust them to take the ethical, moral, or even, positive approach towards anything. And then you've got the people that may be, low performers, high trust, which are still other difficult people. And really the max spot is one of those people that you can trust and knows how to execute on something independently from everyone else on the team. Not to blow you up again, but I consider you a high trust, high performer person. And that was one of those things that we had during that moment, where we had some people that were low trust and low performing, and they just sat on the periphery of the project. But then we had a core team of people that were high performer, high trust, were going to push through any moment that they needed to, and had the skills to do it. And I think that was the only reason that we were able to be successful. Unfortunately, there's still some, low trust, low performing people in that world. And I hope one day that, even our conservative values and the conservative things that we kind of perpetuate can continue to propagate better people that have high trust and are high performing. Because I even think that was one of the critiques when we were working on Truth Social, was there weren't any engineers that were good enough on that side of the political spectrum that would be able to execute on these things. And I think we proved them wrong in that sense. And I think there's a ton of people that are just sitting around, or excuse me, in the grass, waiting, because they have these feelings, they have these values and things that they want to be able to perpetuate, but in the context of where they are, it's very difficult to do. And we found those people at a high frequency when we were at Truth. Tell me a little bit more. You mentioned, going into the military sober, and you mentioned that journey. We've talked about that journey in the past, but tell me a little bit more about that, because I know it's important to communicate it and expose it as a part of the responsibility, or the not liability, but it's neither here nor there. It's, part of the responsibility is to share those stories so that you can hold accountability. That was it.
Yes.
I found it. So part of it is responsibility to hold yourself accountable for these things. So tell me about that story.
Yeah, absolutely. After high school, I went out to University of Denver to go to college, and I found myself, drinking and, using other substances way too frequently. I was really heading down a dark path. I was really already in that dark path, and it was spiraling out of control very quickly. And at 20 years old, I'm approaching halfway through college at that point. I made a decision really that, felt life or death. It really was life or death for me. It was either continue down this dark path, and there was no light at the end of that tunnel, or make a change, surrender to my higher power, and admit that my life was out of control and I needed to make a change. And that's what I did. So at 20, I got sober, and since then I've not taken a drink or used a mind altering substance. I just turned 30 last week. So I'm just pushing a decade on being sober. And it's really that, that is a catalyst moment for me in my life, and being able to start this journey of not only going to the military, but then, having success in business and finding drive to be an entrepreneur and start new businesses and create new value for society, was my ability at a very young age to identify that that was a problem, have faith in something greater than myself, and enact that change. And so, after 6 months of being sober is when I entered basic training and, started my journey in the U.S. Army. And I was very fortunate, especially being, Special Forces recruit turned infantryman. Hazing and the bond of brothers is definitely a part of that process. But I was able to communicate to the other members of my platoon early on when I got to my unit. So like, hey guys, like I'm totally here for the hazing aspect of this. I know it's a part of the journey, but there's one thing I really can't do, because they wanted to get me really drunk my first night. I was like, I just can't drink. And fortunately, they were all very receptive to that. And then they were protective of me, and they kind of defended my sobriety throughout the rest of my contract with the United States Army. So I feel very fortunate and blessed in that regard, where, I was able to get sober beforehand. Then I was able to continue to excel in every field that I applied myself to. Ultimately, I owe a lot of that to my sobriety, if not all of it. Life has really become something I would not have been able to imagine or predict from back then. If you would have asked 20-year-old not sober me if I was going to be a veteran and a business owner, an entrepreneur, I would have laughed you out of the room and probably got drunk. And now, 10 years later, it's really quite a ride when I look back on it, having 5 years in the military and all the experiences that came with that, being a part of 4 different businesses, one now that, I'm the co-founder and CEO of. And it has been a ton of fun. I traveled all over the world at this point, met incredible people, met a lot of garbage people, and learned what I didn't want to do and what I didn't want to emulate. And, I find myself in a very fortunate position right now with a couple really good mentors, a fantastic team, and a growing Rolodex of folks like yourself that, I can lean on when I need something.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I've found throughout life is if you don't have the right people around you, you're always going to be going in the wrong direction. And finding in the context of the military, because I know a ton of people that are veterans and in the military, finding a group of people that were willing to sacrifice that specific thing, because I know that specific thing, alcohol and substance abuse is a difficult thing to get away from in the context of the military. Finding people that will actually support you in that is, somewhat of a miracle in itself. And then contextualizing that around the, belief in a higher power. Because, I think today one of the biggest cultural problems that exists is we have turned ourselves into gods. And I think that's such a crazy mistake, because it limits us to limits everything to yourself, right? And the extent of yourself. And if anything, I'm a faith-filled Christian, and so that's a very important part of my life. And I don't know what it would be like to believe that I am the God of things, right? Like that would be so disappointing for my life, because like, not to say I'm not a decent human being, but like to say that the extent of my abilities is, what is tangibly in front of me or that's in my mind, would be a very disappointing concept to try to attach my life to. And so I can definitely appreciate that, and that resonates a lot with me. So tell me a little bit more about the why of what American Cloud is doing today. I want to hear more about American Cloud.
Absolutely. American Cloud, we started in August, and the why of American Cloud is there's a whole range of whys, really, but ultimately it boils down to infrastructure has veered away from being a utility for creators to make awesome products and services for the masses to use and communicate on. And infrastructure has now veered into this activism space, not participating in certain industries, even though they're legal commerce. And The biggest why is, since falling in love with mission critical infrastructure myself, now I want to bring that utility framework back to the market. Infrastructure is infrastructure is infrastructure. It is a warehouse in a hyper connected city, most likely, that has a lot of fiber coming into it. Let people engage in legal commerce and the legal exchange of ideas without the need for a technology company to become technocratic or political, or use a terms of service as this wall, this iron curtain to not allow businesses and individuals to communicate with each other. So American Cloud, what we've done is we've taken that principle of infrastructure as utility, and we've applied, the infrastructure as a service model to it. We've built a publicly available cloud that's easy to use. The same general trajectory or thesis that DigitalOcean and Linode made is that, the big clouds, AWS, Azure, GCP, Alibaba, Oracle, those clouds are confusing to use. Their UIs are not intuitive. It takes close to 100 clicks to get anything done. There's this massive burden on the user to then incur additional training just to figure out how to use that specific cloud. And instead of that, what we're doing at American Cloud is an easy to use platform with, all the services that 99% of the customers are going to need. Do we have, GeoSat compute today? No, we don't. That market right now, we haven't had a request from a customer to put compute on a satellite. If we do, we'll figure it out. But, we're really focused on those core features that almost all the users are going to need. So we've got a, virtual compute that's got, elastic clouds and VPCs available. We've got a CNCF certified Kubernetes service. We've got block storage. We've got authoritative DNS. We've got load balancers. We actually just released auto scaling for our cloud compute. So that's a feature add-on to our load balancers that allows customers to scale out and in based on CPU and RAM metrics. We're about to release our customer-facing API that'll have a Terraform provider and also our A2 object storage service. So you can start to get the idea of, it really doesn't matter what type of environment you need to build. You're able to build it on American Cloud. It's going to be easy. You're not going to need to click 10,000 times and set up 100 different resources. It's all right there in a simple, easy to understand platform with a team that is hyper focused on enabling our customers and supporting our customers. When you open up a support ticket, you're immediately connected to a human onshore that wants to help you. Real true 5-star experience. And all of this is completely independent from big tech or any of the hyperscaler clouds that have engaged in this activism-based infrastructure. We have our own facility. It's in one of the most fiber dense regions in the world. It's in Santa Clara. It's in the heart of Silicon Valley. So we're kind of born behind the Iron Curtain, and we have all of our own hardware. We've got we've got our entire software stack, which is based on open source frameworks. I'm a big open source proponent. And we're really excited to deliver this in an easy to use way. I mean, something that I harp on, you harp on, we've talked a lot about, is one of the problems with these alternative techs is usually they're not extremely easy to use. They're not intuitive. They're not better than their competition. They're usually an alternative that isn't put together very well. There's not a lot of thought put into how their customers are going to use it. What is that user story to make their lives easier? And so we're continuing to iterate every day, talking to our customers every day about making the product easier to use, better to use, with the features that they need.
Yeah, I've pushed some people y'all's way, and the one piece of feedback that I've constantly got is the level of service has been unmatched in comparison to anything that they've had to engage with to this point. And most of them have been customers that are talking about things that I guess these big tech advocacy groups are against, right? Like, they're faith-based things, things that are constitutionally protected, and they will deplatform businesses at a moment's notice, or if anything, make friction happen. They want there to be more friction for people that do not align with their values. And so I know everybody that I pushed your way has been extremely excited and constantly felt like they actually had someone that was on their side versus someone that was battling against them and creating friction at all points. So, man, I appreciate that, because it at least makes it seem like I'm doing something good for other people. So I love the mission that you guys are on. So tell me about I'm going to switch it up a little bit, kind of shift gears here. On your entrepreneurial journey, tell me about one of the most important attributes or one of the most important things that happened to you along your entrepreneurial journey that helped you to get to that next stage.
I'd say one of the top contenders, if not the top, is finding good mentors and good business partners. And that's a two-sided coin, because you can align yourself with a business partner or mentor that turns out to, be poisonous. And that can lead to a lot of turmoil. And I have experienced that. On the other side of that, the silver lining of becoming aligned with a business partner and or mentor that is not good, is you do get to learn a lot of lessons of what not to do and what not to emulate. And those lessons are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the lessons you learn, I guess, along the easier path, which is having business partners and mentors that really are able to guide you and help you think critically through problems, strategies, growth. And I'm extremely grateful at this point, even at such a young age, to have a handful of really solid mentors and three other partners in American Cloud that are so amazing. I can't even put words to it.
Yeah, I mean, the value of a mentor is amazing. I happen to know one of your mentors, and I've even personally struggled with this over the years. It's not easy to find mentors. I'll be honest, like, I don't know if I've ever had a mentor, a person that has stuck with me over time. It's honestly a frustration point for myself, because most of the time I have great colleagues, or you even have a mix of terrible colleagues along the way, but I can consolidate it around a set of great peers and advisors. But someone that's willing to impart the knowledge that they have learned over time, and is at a different stage, either they've exited a business or they were in a business at a very large scale, that can help you figure out what it takes to bring your business to the scale that is in your vision. I've always struggled doing that, but I know John is one of yours, and I've appreciated my engagements with him over the last 12 months or so. And I know that he's imparting knowledge upon y'all from his experience with owning data centers and scaling businesses and being in the energy infrastructure world, that you're not going to be able to get, because you never were a part of those things. It took time to accumulate that. And his willingness and others' willingness to actually impart that knowledge upon people as they're coming up is, I guess, what is it, in the Jewish community, it's a mensch, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a thing that is, I think, done out of a pure perspective of, I want other people to be better than me in the future, and I don't want them to have to make the same mistakes that I did, right? And so I definitely appreciate that. Tell me about a book or a piece of content or a documentary or something like that that has impacted you over time.
So, from a entrepreneurship perspective, the number one book I would say I would recommend, and has made a has continued to make an impact on my life is the Phoenix Project. It's really my first encounter with DevOps as a theory. And this was early on when I was on the physical side of the industry, and there really wasn't an engineering aspect to what I was doing in business. But the framework of DevOps has continued to pay off dividends. And, there's all these different flavors of DevOps now that we're seeing with platform engineering and chaos engineering. Yeah. But ultimately, creating highly efficient systems and engineering teams is a must, in the technology space. And, saying this out loud, I probably am due to reread Phoenix Project for maybe the, 12th time.
Yeah.
Now that the year's restarted. On the personal side, there's a couple of books that I also would recommend. Dune is a great sci-fi book.
Yeah.
That I've really enjoyed reading. And on the comedy side, there's a book called Lamb by Christopher Moore, which is it's a quick read, probably one 3-hour flight. You can knock it out, but it's full of laughs. And those are probably the 3 books that I want to talk about most.
Do you typically read books, or do you listen to them?
So when I got out of the military, I transitioned to reading them. I was commuting just over 3 hours a day between Fort Bragg and Raleigh, where the firm was at. And I found that I had so much time on the highway that I started listening to these books. And that's really kind of stuck with me, especially as I travel. It's just easier. I'm working crazy hours right now. I have not been making the time to actually read books, even though I should, but I do listen to them. That makes my life easier.
Yeah, I listen to a good bit of books, but I've been really trying to think more or be more critical of, or I guess maybe more intentional of reading books. I've been reading my Bible a good bit more, and I think there's something that gets missed in that interpretation of the book, even the inflections and the tone that someone reads the book in versus the way you consume it, and then just being able to absorb more of it and be less ephemeral. So I don't know. I think it's a both thing. It's an and thing versus an or thing. But I just thought that would be an interesting question, because a lot of people that I engage with nowadays, they listen to books almost exclusively as a part of, or as a function of exactly what you said, time, right? Like there's just not enough time in the day to sit down and during this time in your life, just take the time to read a book, right? But I think it's an important thing. So tell everybody where you can be found, where they can reach out to you, and how they can find American Cloud.
AmericanCloud.com is the quickest way to find us. You can reach out to us there. You can sign up for an account there. You can find out a ton of information on American Cloud just from our website, just AmericanCloud.com. Very excited that we have that domain name, by the way. I'm surprised it wasn't taken. And then me personally, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn pretty regularly. My Twitter handle is _Aron Wagner with 1 A. My parents forgot an A, or, really it's more the Hebrew interpretation of the way to spell Aaron. So it's _Aron Wagner. That's AronWagner. And then my LinkedIn is /Aron Wagner as well. And I'm pretty hyper connected. I'm probably on my devices too often. So, please reach out and let's spark up a conversation.
I haven't seen any underscores in the Hebrew Bible. I'm just kidding. But that's awesome. I appreciate you having a conversation with me today. And, I think something that is important to realize out of this is we are people that need to connect with other people, and the relationships that we build up over time are things that will continue to build our lives up and help us to move forward. And I know I'm appreciative of the relationship that I have with you, and I love looking from the outside in at the successes that American Cloud are having along the way. And I can't wait to see what happens in the future for American Cloud. So thanks for taking some time to chat with me today and get back to work, I guess. Well, cool, everybody. I hope y'all have an absolutely fantastic day. This was the Everyday Hustle podcast. And don't forget, you can go to hustlemob.com. That's HUSTLEMOB.com. And you can go pre-register if you're a merchant or someone that's going to be taking payments in for their services. We're building a product for you, and I hope you'll go there, pre-register for your username. And just like everybody should be doing, they should be hustling every day to figure out what their true passion is and what their goals are in life so that they can reach them. And I think the only way to do that is to hustle every single day. So keep hustling, everybody. Y'all have a great one. Bye.